Okay, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order.
We just served her well.
Redistricting.
Oh,
And I realize.
We roll call, please.
Lawyers, you
Oh,
represent
yes, sir.
municipalities, school
very
districts.
good.
So the urban
Chairman.
planning, zoning is coming really.
Chavez?
Here.
Member Krajewski?
Oh,
Member
you did?
Olson?
Oh, you're in my business.
Call to order.
Yes, sir.
Here. Member Ozak?
Here. Here.
Member Pachowski? Member Rutledge? Here. Member Zay?
That was not a protest.
Okay, unfortunately, member Pachowski and Krajewski are not going to be here. So I didn't know that until today. Maybe we would reschedule, but that's okay. Chairman's remarks, just that was a good first step, I thought, the other day. A little under 3 hours. We're going through and looking at the map. So I want to thank everybody for coming out. Thought it went pretty smoothly. I think our consultants and our attorneys thought it went really well. So we'll go on from there. Approval of the minutes. There a motion to approve this September 7th.
Second.
Member Chapman, seconded by Member Rutledge. Any corrections? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, map proposal. Like I said, I thought it went well.
Sure thing.
Yeah.
Public comment, public
Oh,
comment.
public comment. Is there public comment here? We have it on here?
It's not
Public comment? Oh, sorry.
yeah, it was.
Whipped right by there. Sorry. Okay.
Listening.
No public comment. Okay. Okay. Seeing no public comment, we'll move back down to discussion. I thought it went well. I thought everybody worked well together. Heard there were some concerns later. So concerns, questions on where we're at. I think when I left with Liz, I think each at this time, each county board district was under 1%, which I think the committee had set 1% as our kind of goal to get to if we could. So I was surprised when I went down there later that the other districts had already gotten to under 1. So any questions on proposals?
Yeah, so I would just like to propose that that we actually look at an alternative. I feel like we have a good option in front of us, and we've made some minor changes to an existing map. But I think the consensus of, I would like to at least request anyway, a consensus of the majority to at least look at an alternative and really put to use our map maker that we've hired, just to make sure that this map is truly reflective of 2021 and will get us to 2031. So I think that we haven't really dug deep into some of the data, and I would like to do that. So can I get a consensus that we look at an alternative or have discussion about that?
I'd be open to that.
Well, I mean, what do you mean by alternative? I mean, we've been pretty clear that we wanted to get for the census numbers. This committee wanted to try to get communities pulled together where we could.
And we still want to
Try to do, you know, on boundaries, on lines, which I think we've got to now. I mean, how is it reflective of 2021? I don't understand.
Because I do think there's been major changes in DuPage County in the last 10 years economically, demographic wise, we don't know. I think what we need to do as the majority of this committee, I think we're still kind of refining what we might want to ask of the map maker. And I think what we could do potentially is email Zach with some alternative data points that we would like to look at, and just have an open mind to seeing a true alternative to this map.
Well, I mean, we have the data, right?
I can speak, and I think Zach is on there, but.
That's what I was going to say.
Zach,
Zach, are you on it?
you can.
I am, and I'm about to walk into the building. Apologies that I'm a little late.
Okay.
Oh, well, why don't we wait till?
Okay, we'll wait for
Okay.
them. But I mean, reflective, I can ask our attorneys, I mean, what we proposed, does that meet our requirements per county code and per map making right now where we're at?
Yes, the answer is yes. You've done a very, very excellent job. Both the county board members who've gone into the map room and the mappers to comply with your county code, which is aside from the Voters' Rights Act, is our first priority, that the districts be substantially equal in population. And you've really strived to do that, and you've done that. That the award, sorry, we should call it too. So the district shall be comprised of contiguous territory as nearly as compact as practical. You've done that. You can divide townships or municipalities only when necessary to conform to the population requirements. You've done that. And that you shall create districts in a manner so that no precinct shall be divided between two or more districts insofar as practicable. you've done that, and the rest will be done by the county clerk when they reconfigure the district. So legally, right now, you've done a really good job at bringing the proposal into conformance
Could you
with
repeat
the.
that last one? Could we get a copy of that actually, maybe?
Well, I think you have, this is our memo that we gave to
Oh,
you.
okay, okay,
It's on page 6 of the memo.
okay. And the fourth, what was the fourth?
You create the districts in a manner that, so that no precinct shall be divided between two or more districts insofar as it's practical.
It was in the email that Jason.
This is the
Blumenfeld
email I sent
Oh,
out.
the Jason, okay. Jason, I have it here, then I'll double check that, okay. As
Can you
practical.
just
Yes,
reword
practical,
it
yeah.
so everyone's got it at the top right now?
So the way I
Which means
quoted
it's
from.
allowed
It's allowed.
if
It's
necessary.
necessary to comply with population requirements.
And I want to reiterate,
I'm sorry,
whatever our
Mr.
new
Pages.
proposal would be, would of course, we would want to remain in complete compliance with that. So
Right, and remember initially when State's Attorney Berlin brought us, it was our goal to give you legal advice so you don't get sued.
Right, right.
And which is going on in the statewide right now, and I can tell you will probably happen with the Chicago Alderman. We're looking at probable litigation there too. Our goal was not to tell you what districts to go into, but to make sure that you comply with the law, so you don't have a federal lawsuit or a state lawsuit on your hands.
Well, based, on what Amy is talking about, I guess I came away from that, I was the first one in the room. And so things changed pretty much by the time they bookended the other end. And for me, I mean, we were told from the beginning that there would be a lot of people that could draw maps. Then NAACP, Forest Preserve.
LDEF.
And I think basically what we did last week was clean up a map that we've seen and used for decades, and that we paid our mappers $50,000 to do what GIS could have done for us. And so from that perspective, I would just like to see, I mean, we hired them because of their map drawing expertise. And I would like to see that expertise, how they would interpret the data. So that's one of the reasons that, we did clean up a lot of boundaries, things like that, but I would like fresh eyes on this as well.
What do you mean interpret the data?
Well, to take a look at that, they're map makers, we're not. And
We give them direction. That's the problem. You just don't say, go draw us a map. That's our role as board members, is to say, here's what we want. We saw when we got the census numbers that when we got the numbers, all the districts are still legal. We could have just said the map's going to stay the same. But this committee said from the beginning, we wanted to clean up. We wanted to make sure everybody was within 1%. We wanted to clean up some of the boundaries where we could. Our district especially, if we don't need to be in 6 townships, we don't need to. I mean, and I think that's what we went through last time. So I don't understand what other data. We looked at voters' rights,
Time code.
code. and we-
well, I'm not saying that we won't eventually approve this map.
Right, this is one option. What we want to see is maybe 1 or 2 other options that incorporate different
To make,
things.
to
of
make sure
data.
that we're making
This
the
is
right
just
choice.
cleaning up lines, which quite frankly, I don't think accurately represents the people of DuPage County in 2021. So I would like to get with the majority of this committee and just work with Zach to get a different map made so that we have several variations instead of just this one.
This is it, we're gonna,
And then we choose the one that we all get consensus on.
and we'll be also looking at the Forest Preserve map, I would assume.
I would too.
You would, again, they don't have any authority. They can draw it, but they don't have any
But we
authority.
can
to-
look
Agreed.
at it as an option.
I mean, Zach, when you did it, you broke down the demographic, everything else. Do we have that data?
And so Zach and Josina, I don't want to.
Josina, I'm sorry, Josina, we
Yeah.
see the big picture.
Hi,
everybody.
Ourselves.
Oh, there she is.
There we go.
Oh, where is she?
Like Inception, we're looking at ourselves, but she's there. So all of that is available, and I believe the shape files were sent, where then that would be the demographic information. Basically, whatever level you would want would be able to be spit out from that, just as it would from any other draw.
does this map, does it, you know, like, does it protect minority representation? Do we,
I would defer to Ross and Bert on that.
That was one of the first exercises that we did as legal counsel with the Zach and Christina, was to say, hey, let's look at the map, and with the GIS department as well, was to look at the map and the 2020 census demographic data and say, do we have to take into consideration the Voting Rights Act, or frankly, can we? And the memo goes a little bit more in depth, but basically there's no, in DuPage, even though populations have, of minority populations have increased, especially in certain areas, there is not enough of a concentration or of an area where we can really justify drawing a district specifically for that. That's the.
so I guess my question is, then I want to elaborate on that. Like, I know there's a large lower, now, obviously District 3 we left the same, but I just want to make sure that like no apartment complexes or areas where there's, you know, a heavy concentration of minority population has been like cut in half or, you know, anything like that. So we didn't do any kind of cutting or slicing of any kind of minority districts.
And nor would it be possible, correct, if I might interject, because we are not beholden to the Voting Rights Act for the entire DuPage County, because we don't have any possible communities that might apply to that. So I think that's something that we can actually remove from the table, correct?
And I just want to, so there's, and people might be looking at, and Josina can certainly, you know, chime in on this. There's the state and federal Voting Rights Act. But because the county municipalities aren't subject to the state Voting Rights Act, which is a state statute, which for legislative, state legislative, and federal districts, they are, but it can be. And it's far more permissive than the federal Voting Rights Act standards, which for our purposes of my main minority composition in DuPage, 55% for Black voters, 65% for Latino voters. If you can't draw a district or even a coalition district therein, you know, you wouldn't.
Okay.
Yeah, the populations don't, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think we're clear of that requirement.
Okay, so then demographically, what are you looking at then?
I think we would want to group up. I think we've had some discussions, and of course it's in groups of 2 because that's a requirement for OMA. So I think we need to come to a consensus as a majority and get a list that possibly, could we just email that to you, Zach? And that would be the basis. And Josina, sorry, Josina, if I could email, I think once we come to, I don't think we've truly come to a consensus of what those requirements would be, but we would come together, we would make that list and we would email it to you both. And we'd ask that you make a map based on those requirements.
So Chairman, just a little
And that's dangerous.
caution here. Because the Voting Rights Act is put aside for now, you're a non-home rule county.
Right.
You're pretty much stuck with county code.
Right.
And existing state and federal law. We have done research in regards to political gerrymandering and other considerations that some other entities may have taken into account in years gone by. And where the Supreme Court is now, where state courts are, where the litigation is going or has gone and is going in regards to drawing a map based on Republican Democrat, to be quite blunt.
So could we put together our requirements and get those to Zach, and then before we even, any of us even view that map, we get some counsel on whether or not it's appropriate? Would that allow a safety measure?
It would.
Or I don't know what is your recommendation on how to handle that so that we do stay clear?
I think that's really a good way to travel. If you have some different direction or want to take into consideration some other data, email us. We'll take a look at it in coordination with Josina and Zach. We'll give you an opinion quickly back and say, go down that road, go ahead, don't go down that road, or if you go down that road, you go down that road with some caution as to what could be. Because this, again, I think I said this before, it's a very litigious society we live in these days, both in the federal side and the state side. And that our goal is to give you advice so you don't end up paying people like us to litigate.
So one way or another.
One way or another.
Yeah.
So could I ask a question? I don't know, and Zach, maybe you don't have this, but so if we want to keep, to our county code and state and federal laws and everything like that, could this map drastically be changed and still meet that, do you think, or, yeah, okay.
Josina, do you want to? You heard that clearly.
There she is.
It can. I mean, there are lots of different ways to approach the map. I think if you guys want to put some ideas out there in terms of some guidelines or data that you'd like to use and run it through Bert and his team, we can explore what would be the legal way to approach it.
I'll say, so now my question is, we've been doing this since January. And once we got the data and we saw that our old districts are still legally binding, I've never heard the word drastically change from this committee at all. Is this the new direction we want to go? And the premise I have a problem with is that because we're paying our consultant, we should have them make maps. That's like I'm bringing my car in for an oil change, but while I'm here, why don't you check everything else and do an overhaul on the car? I mean, if we spend, why did we waste our time for 3 hours the other day doing this map?
I think we have a good baseline based on a map that we've generally been comfortable with, but I don't think we're actually doing our due diligence and being responsible to the voters of DuPage County if we don't maximize our opportunity, which comes along once every 10 years, to allow our map makers to have a certain amount of guidance, but yet also freedom to make sure that we are creating a map that truly represents 2021 and gets us to 2031. We know how much the overall, you can look at so many areas of DuPage County. Agriculturally, we've drastically changed. I mean, DuPage County is a different place than it was 10 years ago. And I actually think that our maps should reflect that. And I know that sometimes bold leadership and change can be a little scary, but I think we can keep it within guidelines that our attorney is comfortable with, that our map makers are comfortable with. But quite frankly, I think we've tied the hands of our map makers a little bit too much. And I want to see what they're capable of.
But again, I don't know how you work with other people. Has any other client come in and say, draw me a map and let me give you A, B, and C and just draw us a map? I mean, usually you have input from, I'm assuming Kane County, you have input from the board members and whatever. I mean, that's our role here. We shouldn't have a committee then. We could just hire a map maker and they could just come and say, okay, this meets everything and just go ahead with it. That's the role of this committee, is to set the guidelines and how we're going to do it. I mean, we could be here for months doing that.
Yes, this is true. I mean, I think the primary guidelines that we work with, right? Number one is the Federal Voting Rights Act, right? So people say first, draw us what is possible in terms of voting rights. You're in a unique situation in your county where you don't have the ability to draw federal voting rights districts. The next is around trying to keep municipalities and townships whole. And that's something that I think we were able to significantly clean up while staying within the 1% deviation standards in the last round. And a lot of this, right, is also about the local knowledge of the areas that I, as a map maker, only have access to kind of high level data. And so those kind of anecdotal things that were shared through the map making process around which, townships and municipalities have more in common, what are main roads and other physical boundaries like railroad tracks that, are hindrances to, people crossing lines or just kind of demarcations that are best understood in the county. And so those were the things that I feel like we were able to actually do pretty seamlessly. Last week, I was telling Jason earlier, I think this is probably one of the more smooth I guess I would say, processes that we've been through where, you guys were able to kind of trade lines across districts that were mutually agreed upon. That does not always happen. And it seemed like, at least through the process last week, that both, districts, when we were moving blocks or lines, were in agreement that that was the best thing for the county and their respective districts. So in that respect, I would say, I think we are in a very good place on the process that we've laid forth. If there are, again, additional criteria that you would like us to look at, I think, again, the process that was recommended of putting those together, getting an agreement from this committee and running it through our legal is another round that we can go through.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last, what was your last sentence? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last.
Oh, I was saying, that again, if there are additional criteria that you would like us to look at, that the suggestion that was made earlier of putting those forth to our legal, letting them look at it, that we can take another look at it.
And just to answer directly to you, Chair, in other jurisdictions, one, there was almost always a VRA component to it, or there was an existing, just truly minority representation that, even though it doesn't meet the VRA consideration, it was very important to that community to maintain that. And then in almost every jurisdiction, there has been, in some cases, board members themselves that literally, moved around a line and turned it over to the county GIS department and said, show me what that could be, and to try and take that into consideration, and or an outside entity provided that. And some of them were worth and able to be considered. Others, just out of, the deviation was way too much. The, the will of the body was like, that's way too drastic of a change. That was out of sight, kind of dismissed out of sight. But there was other input offered, but that's not, mandated in any situation. But there were different, at least in our experience, different dynamics at play.
And even though we don't have to follow the Voting Rights Act, if this committee said we want to make sure, we do have some small groups of minority areas that we want to keep intact, we could make that part of the requirement going forward, right?
Again, I would defer to Russ and defer
So
that.
we did that or no?
You can, except you have to
Very
be
careful,
careful,
okay.
because when you start to do that, you're subjecting yourselves to strict scrutiny
Okay.
in any sort of court proceeding, because it's not applicable to try and do a preemptive Voting Rights Act district. If you draw something that's not considered compact, or, I would assume it'd be contiguous, but compact,
Right.
doesn't comply with any of the other elements of the law, you'd have to
Okay.
really justify it.
Okay.
And is it true you'd have to do that with every single community that you felt was designated in that?
If you're using race or ethnicity as a basis to draw districts,
Or income.
income is set, that's not really
Okay.
part of the Voting Rights
Okay.
Act.
Okay.
But race or ethnicity is part of the Voting Rights Act. Once you take that into consideration, it's subject to strict scrutiny, which in courts is the highest level. There's very little deference to the board's decision on why to do that. The court will look at that. Is this the most narrowly tailored thing that you could do that you're not violating anyone's rights or discriminating for any improper reason?
And would the expectation be that if we were to do something along those lines in Lombard, we must do it similar to in a community in Bolingbrook or Wheaton or whatever, that you would have applied the same consideration?
You would have to justify, and it would have to be based on whatever the facts and the demographics are in whatever district you're drawing. And
And
how
it seems
to
to me applying it to just one area would be difficult to justify why you didn't.
If the numbers were similar throughout, that would make it difficult to only do one. Why would you choose one for one ethnic group versus the other, a different
Right.
ethnic or racial minority?
Right.
You're
really heading into
once,
the law by here.
So
Right,
your
yes.
recommendation just generally is us just steer clear from that sort of recommendation. Okay, wonderful.
We haven't even, before we go in another direction, we haven't even seen the breakdown of how these districts are.
Can we see the breakdown of the
Yeah,
district?
Tom, you were working, I know you guys were working on the shape files, and
And actually, if you want, I have a demographic breakdown of the various races.
Right, I mean, before we start moving forward, making new map, I mean, I'd like to get all these figures out to the other board members. I mean, I'm hearing about, demographics and brave leadership, but the only thing I'm not hearing right now on these objections is the magic word, political boundaries, which was brought up last week. I mean, is that one of the areas you're looking to look at, our political boundaries?
I think we want to talk to the map maker, and I think that I think every option is on the table that's within the law.
Okay, but specifically, we already talked if we can see the demographics, and we already heard that we don't have to do a voting rights. What other thing are you looking for besides population and communities?
I think that's where I want to get more consensus amongst the members, talk directly with the map maker and get some ideas of how we can change the maps, not necessarily change them, but how we can overlay different information to see how the maps come together.
What different information?
I don't think we've come to consensus yet as to what specifically that would be. Is that something that isn't that something that we could email you and we could have a few different versions? I don't think we have to define it today.
But again, then you're drawing a map on your own without input from the rest of the committee. And I thought this was going to be an open and fair process from the beginning, but now it seems like we want to go in a different direction. After we sat there and did it, and from what I thought, we had a pretty good map drawing. Everybody seemed to be in consensus. We seem to be hitting all the targets.
Yeah, that the county lead. Yep.
But now I'm hearing is that we want to do it something else, but we want to hear, have demographically freedom to do this. What are you looking for?
I think we're looking to see how it can look differently for DuPage County. We've had this map for decades, is my understanding, that these lines haven't moved very much, and we absolutely know that populations have changed in DuPage County. So I think we do need to do several different overlays as to what this could look like and how the lines could potentially change.
And again, we're not talking about throwing this map out.
No.
We just would like to see an alternative to make sure that whatever map we finally do vote on will be the best for the members and not just us. It's like, we're all making these decisions, but we very well may not be here 10 years from now. So it's not just about, oh, this is my District 6 and this is, where I'm comfortable with. We kind of have to get beyond ourselves and beyond our terms and make sure that we're writing a map that's good for the century that the decade that we're in. And I think it's wise to utilize the experts.
That concerns me. Best for the members. Is that our goal? I mean, are we Springfield here? Are we best for the members?
I think
No, I
she
said
said,
no.
she said
We're
no,
not.
she said not that,
DuPage
Tim.
County.
She said not
I
that.
said
She
no,
for the
that's
people.
not what we want to do here.
Jason wants to say something.
Mr. Chairman, I know me and you talked about this before this meeting. Tom Ricker did get the shape files from Josina and Zach. Thank you for that. And what he actually pulled together for us in the past couple of days since our workshop on Wednesday, whatever you want to call it, is some of this breakdown as well as an interactive map to where you can zoom in a little bit more for that. Working with his software ArcGIS, this is what we're intending to talk about today or mentioning it to the committee. He's actually made accounts for the board members so they can actually go on this, see this map and zoom in. And if you'd oblige, Mr. Chairman, we'd like to maybe just show a few of those real quick.
Did you have that demographic by district?
Yeah, and I didn't want to interject here, but if you don't mind, I would love for Tom to share that real quick and show some of that breakdown. And again, you guys will be getting access to this. This was just finalized a little bit ago. That's the only reason we haven't been able to share it with everybody. So let's just give Tom a second to get that shared up and we can go from there.
Okay, if everybody can see, this is one of the applications. This is a GIS dashboard. This is taking the population and all the demographic breakdowns that we used to create the map. So as you see here, we have the map itself. You can go in and turn on various layers on and off here. If I wanted to turn on the current county board districts, turn those on, turn them off. But also what we have is reading from the data that we got was also a breakdown. So if I go here, I can look and see that's the non-Hispanic white. Hispanic, the green is non-Hispanic black, and then non-Hispanic Asian. So that's the breakdown between all the 6 districts from what we derived from last week.
Oh, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I
Yeah,
got it.
Right.
I was like, what?
Right.
Okay.
So if you look here, you can see the different, if you hover over each of these, you get a count of each of the demographic breakdowns across each district. So if I was to click here, can also then highlight that district and gives me the population count for that district. And again, a pie graph with the percentage of those demographic breakdowns.
So with this, we'll be sending this email. It's an individual username and password. So Tom's going to be sending an individual
Yeah.
email with it so you can see
What
it.
we'll do is send you an email for each of the board districts, and you'll have access to what we call this hub site. And in the hub site, we've got.
Yes, all board members.
Yeah, we've got 3 maps that we've created. One of them here is what we call the swipe application. So as it opens up, I have the current county board district on the left, and on the right is the proposed. And all you have to do is take this swipe tool, and you'll see the difference. You can see the changes.
Yeah.
So you can now zoom in to specific details here. And you'll see the changes. Okay, again, on the right is the current. So if I want to see just the current, I could just move that map over to the left. I can see everything on the proposed, excuse me. And then if I want to see the current, I have that, and then see the difference between the two. If I want to I can pull this up like a shade as well. And again, in each of these, that's just the swipe, very simple, back and forth. Okay. The next one here, this is a markup tool. Okay, so this is a basic markup tool. So this is, again, I can zoom in and I could turn on various layers. So here on my current county board, I can turn that one on. There's the proposed layer. If I want to go and see how the municipal lines fall within that proposed layer, I can turn on the municipality boundaries. The election precincts. And then the actual county board, or excuse me, these census blocks that were used
Geeking out over
to,
there, Mary.
I am geeking out.
and that were used to derive the actual boundaries. These are the population counts for each of the districts. If I want to see the detail of this as well, I can double click, and there's for each the breakdown, the demographic breakdowns for that block.
For the block?
For the block.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a wow.
Tom, I just want to add one thing. This is exactly what Josina and Zach had with them essentially, but they were doing it on the redistricting side. ArcGIS is the software that the county uses for GIS. This is one of the applications we were able to do with it, with these shape files that Josina and Zach were able to create. So it's easier to tell a story this way. And then this way also, I know a couple people asked me about, well, where did this boundary actually line up? It's a line. Here you go. This is exactly where it is. So again, and Paula member Garcia, yes, every board member will get it to all of them, yes.
All right, thank you.
So with this as well, there's a markup tool that we give. So it's a temporary you can take. And if you want to mark up the map, you can go ahead, select the line, and begin drawing a basic temporary line. You're not writing anything to the map, you're just creating a markup. So
Did you save your markups?
You can, the markups you can print out
Okay.
and create a PDF and save that PDF, but the markups are just temporarily.
Yeah, that's just if I can do
It's
it.
not like.
We don't wanna make any
No, right.
But you could print it from your screen.
Yeah.
So if I go, this is my line here, I can put a text in it.
Okay.
And if I want to increase the size of it, I can place that text. If I placed it in the wrong area, I can do an undo and place it where I want to. Okay, I can then close that down if I want to print it out here. I'm going to hit print. And now, say this is my map.
Tom, do basic keyboard shortcuts work with the software?
Keyboard.
Keyboard shortcuts like Control Z will.
Yeah,
back me
there's
up,
some
or-
where like if you zoom like a zoom window, if you want to create a window
Right,
zoom, yeah,
right.
I think it's like a control and then it opens up
Plus,
and gives you.
yeah, I have to sit at
Yeah, I'd
a
have to
keyboard to
look and
know,
see.
but okay, good.
Okay, so I'm gonna hit print. I can create different formats here. But what it'll do is it'll generate a PDF map.
Would you send that PDF to yourself, to your own email?
Yeah, you can save it.
Oh, okay.
Where it'll open up in a
So
browser.
name it and save it. Got it.
So,
Okay.
so there's my PDF.
Okay, that's all I got.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't want to-
so now I can go ahead and if I want to, I can print it here up in the upper right, or if I want to save it,
You've drawn that line through several homes.
I can save it, give it
We're
a
not gonna do
PDF.
that.
Save it.
Will it then change the number then? Will it show you what the number is?
No, this is just the markup is just for like if, okay, I want to see what happens, if we want to give something to Josina or something and say, hey, what happens if we, it's just a tool to mark up.
Okay.
You can even, if you wanted to, you can print out a map and grab the highlighter and highlight it here. It's just a simple markup tool.
Sure, Zay, to that point, and that's where Josina and Zach, they have the software. for
Yeah,
that.
they
That's
have the
not-
software. When they move the line, what their software does is like when we worked and then when you were selecting like the block polygons, these here. Let me get here.
Recalculating.
When we were drawing around these polygons here. Remember how we were kind of windowing around this area here, grabbing, this area here and grabbing that area, and then you would have those 5 selections and then move the line, and then you see the numbers change. That's what their software does.
Unfortunately, I'm old. I can't read. What are all those items there? I can't read any of them.
Which one?
Which one?
The layers.
Oh, the layers?
Yeah.
Here, this is their text. Let me clear
You're
the
blind.
markup.
I have.
Right?
Some of the options.
So
are-
you're not old, you're just vain,
Don't,
right?
don't park next to them. I guess that's right.
The layers here are proposed county board districts. County board members, the residents, where each county board member is. The third one is the Forest Preserve board members. The current county board district, municipalities, election precincts, the census block information, which we use to create the boundary. That's had all the population breakdowns. Census blocks of population over 18. Census block groups, total population breakdown for block groups are the larger census. Okay, you go block group, and then tracts. And then we have 18 by block groups, and then total population census tracts, and then 18 census tracts. So
And just for clarification, just so we would know when if this were to come from you, the 18 and over is basically the voting age population consideration on that, but you don't have a demographic for minority composition layer
for 18,
or for anybody.
yeah, for the.
Which one was that?
That was in the dashboard.
Oh, but not within this
Right, not in this,
version.
right, we can't see that
The
on
the
this.
demographic breakdown's not in that.
No.
No, it's, you can access it through the hub site here.
But for,
All
yeah, for
three of them.
intents and purposes, it's the total population and voting age population would be the most consideration. All right.
And then the one I showed you here, this was the dashboard.
Yeah.
Okay, what we can do is, like I said, you'll log on to this, you'll have access to these 3 applications. And then also, we've provided you with tutorial videos starring yours truly. So each one kind of explains how to utilize each of the applications that I just showed you. So if you watch the videos, you can follow along and go through. And
Screen actors guild credit.
So with the,
I mean, my suggestion would be before we start drawing new maps, is that we get this information to all our board members. They get a chance to look at it. Those members who have questions of what they want to do demographically or what changes they want to do, give it to our attorney. And then would next week be fine that we can meet again and give us a week for everybody to take a look at it and then meet and see where we want to go forward on this? Does
I
that
don't
make
want to
sense?
wait on new maps because I think we're already in a time crunch. So I would like to see those two things go forward in tandem with each other. I think that I think we should all be working on the current map with our new software program. But I think Jack and Josina, out of respect for their time and our timeline, that we should give them the details that we want for them to utilize. We get it, of course, to the attorneys. We want everything to follow the letter of the law.
It's the four of us.
Yes, the four of you. And so, yeah.
Would we want to just direct them to draw a different version of this map, meeting all the criteria that are that's in the county code? Show us what other things they can come up with that meet the county code criteria.
Well, there could be 1,000.
I mean, is that right?
Could be
I mean,
1,000
We have to
different
give them,
ways.
I want to.
I don't know, because I'm not sure, but you know
Well,
what I'm
that's
saying?
just it. We don't know.
They have
You said
drawn,
it in a nutshell right there.
But how do you not know? How can you tell them to do something that I don't know?
No, I'm saying, I don't think we can come up with three
Consensus,
versions or
yeah.
two other
Two other
versions of how we can meet the county code and all the federal laws, come up with two maybe new versions of this map and
I like that.
let us see what they look like. I mean, I don't know, that's what I'm sensing. Maybe is that a way to go about it?
I think so.
you.
Individually, not as a committee. Individually.
No, have the map makers just say, hey, because I asked, because I wasn't sure, could we change this map to still meet the federal and county code? And then Yasina said, yes, somebody said yes. So maybe we asked to see two more versions of this map, how it can be redrawn to meet the county, all the regulations and rules, and see what other maps they come up with. And then maybe we'll look at 3 maps.
I would
Does
like
that
to
make
have,
sense?
I do think that, but I want to give specific direction as well with a few. I mean, I haven't come to a complete list of the things that I would like to see, but I'd like to have at least a list that I can pass on to you. as to what I'd
We're
like
gonna
to
need, speaking for Josina and Zach, they're gonna need some
Yeah.
direction. They can easily move lines and, and come up with another map or 2 maps, moving lines and keeping within the guidelines that
So we need to have another workshop where everybody
we
comes
need to know,
together.
they need to know what else they're inputting.
Right.
Right, Josina? I don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, I mean, so this may seem a little counterintuitive. So I think sometimes people think that there's like only one way to draw a legal map. The challenge is, the problem is not that there's only one way. The problem is that there are literally infinite ways. And so for you to just tell me to draw 2 more versions, that doesn't make sense without some very specific guidance as to what the criteria that I would draw on would be and why. And that's where, again, I think it should be a committee discussion about what those criteria ideas are. They run through legal. And then we can discuss whether that makes sense or not. Again, like, part of the reason you don't have your GIS mapper and you have an outside consultant is that so you have somebody who is more neutral. But I also, the weakness of some of that, as well as the strength and appropriateness, is that I don't know the local areas. And so that's where, again, that's why the last process was actually really helpful to know, oh, these are the street boundaries that people recognize the most. These townships have more in common with each other than other townships. That kind of feedback is helpful for guidance. And that's where we started in the last process. I think that there are additional criteria. There needs to be collective agreement on what those criteria are, and then run through legal. And then I'd be happy to draw any additional maps. But again, recognizing that, to say just draw 2 more maps can be a bit of a little bit too broad of direction.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I don't know. I've never done this, so I don't know how many maps could be drawn or whatever, but just looking at this map that we drew last week, I mean, we cleaned it up a little, we cleaned it up a lot. The lines are nice and straight. I mean, it looks I think you said it met all the criteria for, the county code and other things, but, if other members want to take another stab at it and take another look.
And I think I could prepare
Let's
that
see what-
quickly. I could kind of work one-on-one with each of the members. We could get a consensus of kind of maybe 2 scenarios of what we want to present, maybe 2 lists, and then that would give us 2 outcomes. And then we would have 3 maps to evaluate and take a look at and see which one we like the best. So would that be something that you think is reasonable?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
again, the direction from it, because what we would think is 2 other options might just fly completely in the face of what you expect those
might.
options to be, right?
Might
So-
very well.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not clear how that would work. Are
Right,
we
I mean,
going
what
to request
consensus of who?
Which consensus, and it seems like anything we want to do, we need to run through.
Of course, and
our
yeah.
attorney.
right.
So,
Well, I think
I'm
that,
confused at where we're at this point, because I thought last week went well, and in terms of my district, I feel like we cleaned up and put some other, it seems more cohesive to me, and I'm just not sure where we go this way in terms of running it through something that will meet all the criteria that we expect to meet.
I think it's, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that it's very, because we have such a, just a really small amount of criteria that we have to follow, quite frankly, we have 4 things that we have to follow in the county code.
Right.
So really, we have essentially a blank slate for DuPage County, and I'm not saying, I don't want to set off any red flags when I say that, but essentially, we will follow those 4 things in the county code, but I would like to put together a list and get input from my colleagues and possibly have one map that has these requirements on it and one map that has these, and then we compare it to the one that we currently have. And then we come to consensus as to which map we like the best.
Well, what are
Not
these?
everybody's happy.
I don't know
What
yet.
are
I think
these?
that's what I'm saying. I'm getting
Well, you
input,
can't-
but I
you
know
can't
that.
be. You
No,
you
it
have to
can't
say it. I mean, do you want a Republican map? Do you want a Democratic map?
No,
Is
I'm
that
not
what you're
saying
looking
that.
at? There?
I am
Is
saying
that what you asked for the
no,
other
but
day?
this map came out on Friday in our packet, and I am currently actively every day getting feedback. My township chairs are calling me. They're saying, is this map movable? I'm getting input right now because this is we've
What
only had this.
township chairs of what?
Well, just various people, township chairs,
Township chairs of the
constituents,
Democratic Party?
they're saying, is this the final map?
So
And
you're
I-
saying yes,
Yeah,
of the
but of
Democratic Party?
course, yeah,
Okay, well, then you're talking about political boundaries.
not always, but I'm also getting calls from constituents saying, I've seen the new maps and I have a concern about this. We had a forest preserve issue that we're fixing. I'm taking calls from constituents all the time. And they're saying, what's the movement with this? What can we do? It's not necessarily always going to be anything specific, but I think I would like to outline what some of those are and let's see what happens. Let's see what our options are.
So what if you get consensus, what are you gonna do with that consensus?
Well, I'm just saying we have consensus, I think, today to look at a couple different options.
I
And
don't
then-
think there's any consensus today. I mean, again, I haven't heard from any of the county board members. Nobody's called me and said, hey, what's going on with this map?
I've got
I mean, they
several
haven't-
calls from county board members.
They
because
haven't,
I'm
we
on
haven't
this
even sent
committee.
out any of the demographics or anything. All we've sent out was basically a PDF file with it. We haven't broken down anything yet. I mean, that was the part of today was, here's where we're at. Let's send this out and let's see what everybody thinks.
And to be clear, nobody should have seen, when you say people have seen new maps,
This was just in
there
a
should have
packet.
been no new map for anybody to see at this point, correct?
Well, this was in our.
No, it's in our packet.
It was in our packet that's online for this meeting.
Josina, they're talking about the
Proposed.
proposed, however, that was
Correct.
sent to the committee and the county board, that was not posted in the agenda, we were having a
Oh, it wasn't
discussion
in
on
the
it.
agenda.
No.
Oh,
No,
okay.
we were discussing
Well,
it.
So then how did everybody know about it?
I don't know. Maybe they were talking about the old maps and they were saying where they are. I didn't get specifics of what they have.
Well, and Art, at some point, we have to take this to the public for comment, correct?
Right.
And if our constituent, I think that we put more thought into, okay, here's a couple of options, tell us what you think, rather than, this is it, there's where we're going.
Okay, so can I, well, let me do this. If you look at page 7 of our memo, when you got a second, we're getting to the point now where you have to some time considerations.
Right.
Because there's another step here. On page 7, if the board failed to complete the reapportionment of the county by the third Wednesday in November, then the DuPage County Clerk is directed by statute to convene a county apportionment commission. So even though section 2-3002A of the county's code extends the board's redistricting deadline to December 31st, subsequent sections seem to conflict and do not limit the reapportionment commission deadline. So you do face another deadline.
Right.
Which is the third Wednesday is the
November
17th.
17th.
November
So
17th.
if we don't have a map by then, the clerk can convene.
Yes.
Is mandated.
I don't think
Mandated.
any of us are.
I don't think we want
I don't
it.
think
It's
that's
one-
correct.
No.
But thank you for pointing it out.
It's just, because that's only, it's a big difference from December 31st, obviously. in
Yeah,
terms of-
much shorter time.
And to answer the public comment question, if the county board chair had tendered a map, you're mandated to have public hearings. You are not mandated under this scheme. That's not to say you should, it's up to you.
I think we
But
should.
you need to know both aspects, you need all aspects of the law.
We're talking about doing one.
And we only are, this is.
We're not really required to do
No.
any, but
Okay.
we said we would do
Can I ask, just so I know I haven't heard clear direction of what I need to do at the end of this meeting too, so I just wanted to know, the original intention of this commission, or this committee, was after we did the initial, hey, let's look at this, okay, let's do an open house like we did prior. I'm thinking, or I'm sensing that's exactly what we would like to do again, which is fine. I will do that whenever you guys advise me, this is the map we want to do that workshop with. But then, that still builds another week in there. So we got to be mindful of that. If we're going to do this, that's one of those weeks.
And I asked Josina and Zach when I was in my 2-on-2 session on Wednesday, I said, if we wanted to, how long does it take if we want to look for an alternate? And it seemed like it was about a week turnaround. Is that about right for alternates?
It would depend on what the criteria are, but yeah, generally a week.
So if we got those requirements to you, say within the next 2 to 3 days, and then that was firmed up through legal and through the mapping, then I would think that we could schedule a meeting for 2 weeks from today, and we could be able to take a look at those maps. And that would still keep us well into the middle of October.
No,
and
there would
we have
have to
plenty
be
of time.
another meeting of the committee to go over whatever you're asking to do.
Yeah, I think you would need committee approval and then also again, building in time for Bert and his team to make sure that they're looking through all of the legal
It would
ramifications
be the
before
same
it gets
setup we had
handed to
before.
me.
We would, all 6 of us would come and we would go down there and look at and see whatever. I mean, from the beginning, Member Ozog said there needs to be 2 people in that room, so it's not partisan. That's what I was told. Again, we didn't do it, give it a partisan, we did it by district, but if you're talking about now putting partisan stuff in there, we just give it to them and then this map just comes out with no input from anybody else on the committee. I think that's
I
just
have not
reckless.
said that. You've said that. I have not said that.
Well, you said you would give them stuff and then they would draw the 2 maps.
Right.
So who would be there? We'd have to have work groups again to go over that
But I think that they
criteria.
could draw the, am I misunderstanding? My thought was is that we would get you criteria based on recommendations of the committee, and we could get that to you, and then you all could draw the maps before we even have to do our 2-on-2 meeting.
And we do the 2-on-2 after we review the.
Yeah, just like I think that would be a faster and more efficient process. Where we're running in tandem.
I'm thinking-
I mean, at this point, I don't really see how we go forward with that when I see, there's 4 of us here and 1 Republican member of this. And how are we supposed to give a committee recommendation? I'm confused here. I really am.
Well,
I just don't
I am
see-
too. I thought everything went well the other day. Again, I didn't hear a whole lot of concern about it. I left and I thought everybody, our staff, Josina, Zach, our lawyers thought it went really well. And then 2 members came in at the end and then it seemed to kind of blow up at that point.
I wouldn't necessarily say that. I was gonna, in old business, address some of the problems with the process that we had. I don't think that I can go through it now if you want, but actually I thought that some of the process on Wednesday was inherently flawed for it being a fair process, and I can go through that a little in more detail.
Please do.
Do you want me to do that
Sounds
now?
good, yeah.
So I felt like if we can bring up Wednesday's schedule, I think I asked Jason to prepare that.
Just give me 1 second, I got to pull it up. If you can pass that out too. I have a physical copy here too
Okay.
for you. I just wanna get it so it can go on. Go on.
Oh, yeah, you're fine to share as soon as you get on the Zoom.
Thank you.
Make sure your speakers are muted.
So it's- And I can talk through this a little as everyone's getting their paperwork, but as we've talked through that the deviations are at their greatest potential of movement when you go in for the very first meeting. And so those deviations continue to work towards zero as you get to the bottom of the list. So if we look at a fair process to me would have been that we would have had, we obviously have 6 districts, 2 going in at a time. It would have meant that for every 3 meeting numbers, each district would have had a seat at the table. Now, I don't think there was any malintent in the way that this process was put. It was obviously like efficiency, put in for efficiency, where Mary was in the room and we kept her in the room and she rotated out. But the unfortunate part of the way this was set up is when you're dealing with deviations that are continually getting closer and closer to zero, the further down you are on the list, the less movement you have for your own potential map. So in the future, and when we redo this, I would like to see a more fair process. And I think it can be, actually, I brought this today because I think it can be very non-technical, where we just say 6 goes in with 2. And this works perfectly for our districts and our county.
Jason.
I would like to just trust, I'm the one that made this list. This was purely out of, I just want to give the background.
I
This
agree.
was out of efficiency, where we were in the building. I was trying to make it so I didn't have you guys moving all that. There was no other say other than Jim,
And like I
10
said,
minutes before
I
saying
can
yes, so.
see that. I think it was
Yeah.
made for efficiency, but what it did do is it hindered the amount of movement that you had the further you got down on the list. And as you can see, for me personally, for District 5, I did not go into the room until slot, where was my first time in the
6.
room? 6. And so by then, a lot of those deviations had been naturally moved. I'm not saying anything did anything wrong, but I think I would just like to see a fairer process where every 3 slots, every district is going in the room. Equally, yeah.
If I can
Can I
interrupt,
make a suggestion as well?
I'm sorry?
Just
Uh,
I want to make a suggestion as well, she said.
Go ahead, please.
My comment was, for instance, I walked in and Jim and Sheila, I think Jim was leaving, anyway.
Right, Mary and I are supposed to be together, so Sheila's here, you guys go ahead.
And so the first thing I was told was that Carol Stream was now in District 6. And my point is that should I have objected to that? I could have objected to that. And I didn't have a problem with that because it fit the criteria of putting communities together. So that was fine with me. And then we discussed the other parts. So I didn't really have an issue with how, I felt like I could have still changed things if I had felt strongly about. Again, this is where your knowledge of the district comes in, or geographical knowledge. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I just think that.
Josina gonna suggest.
Oh, yeah, Josina, I'm sorry.
Well, I was gonna just, I know that seems like that may have been the way that process would have rolled out, but the process, we actually moved deviations, actually increased deviations through the process. I think we actually had some of the highest deviations at the very end. So just to kind of counter that while that logic may seem the way that things may have happened, we actually grew in deviation and then came back. I think we had the biggest deviation gap actually with the last group between 2 districts because so much had been moved. Again, I also think, and this was a part of the process that we had built in that didn't happen, is having all of the feedback from the different districts ahead of time also would be very helpful so that everybody does get one equal say in the process, but also it helps me be able to figure out what makes the most sense from the deviation standpoints and taking everybody's feedback into consideration. It literally was by luck that we did end up where everything was agreed upon and ended up within 1% deviation. That honestly wasn't even a goal. At the end of the day, it was just to get the full picture of the feedback. But if in the next round, if we do this, I would really encourage the individual districts, individual members, pairs of districts to provide that feedback ahead of time, because it's unlikely that that magic will happen again. And that actually through the process, the deviations went higher and higher and were able to be resolved in the end, but that is not normally the end of the process. So those are my two suggestions. One, people providing that feedback ahead of time so that as a map maker, I can provide some more proactive solutions. That would be very helpful. And then also, again, like that's how it worked out this time. But the fact that one, the deviations did get bigger through the process, and that the fact that we were able to resolve within 1% really was by a good amount of luck and magic.
Thanks so much. So, Tuesday did send out an email asking us to meet with our county reps, our district reps and meet. And Jason or somebody provided us, we came in this room with a huge map. Pete was involved, Pete, Paul and myself. And we worked on those lines that we thought, were gonna be okay for our district. And then we had consensus even from Pete, so now when we went in, a little bit of that changed, because of the deviations or whatever they were. But, Paula and I worked on our district along with Pete to make the changes that we wanted to change. And then I don't know if District 5 did that. I don't know if District 6, I don't know if it's District 3. So where are all these changes? I mean, why weren't these huge changes made? If you guys, if you wanted to really change the map, why wasn't this brought forward a couple weeks ago, right? So we had an opportunity to make those big changes then, I guess, right? So
I think it's hard for me, having never made a map before, and this is, I need the help of the map maker to understand. That's why I want to actually use a different criteria to see what potentially, instead of us just, quite frankly, I appreciate that there are some times where cleaning up the lines makes sense, like to Josina's point, if you have a major street or things like that, but I quite frankly don't think that our voters care whether or not we have these jagged lines or super straight. I think that what they care about is this an accurate representation of their, the needs of the people of DuPage County. And so
How is it not representative?
I don't know, because all we've really looked at is certain demographic information.
Well, then how can you say it's not representative of it?
We don't know. We don't have an alternative to compare it to. I would like to.
Well, you want to make two more maps that you have no idea what that would be either.
I don't have no idea.
You talk about a more fair process. Liz, I border five districts. I was in there twice. When we came in, I was in with Sheila at the beginning. The Carroll Stream portion was Member Schwarz's idea, as you had said. I said, fine, we did that. I talked with District 1 about, again, we have a small portion of Roselle. We said, why don't we get rid of that, make Gary, and then we left. And I came back in later and we looked at it and our consultants are going, we're under 1% in every district.
But with all due respect, Jim, I
Not
believe
required,
that Sheila is the representative for District 6. So I don't know why District 6 went into the room 8 times. You don't border 8 districts.
I didn't go in 8 times.
No, but between Sheila and Jim, you guys were in the room 8 times. I believe that District 6 should have one representative that's going in the room, just like the rest of the districts.
Well, we need to change our committee assignment or committee structure, because the way it's worked out this time is that we have a chairman who is from District 6 and we have a member from District 6.
But Sheila
It
was.
would happen some other way. Somebody would have the chair and another district unless we change that we, for instance, elect the chair of the committee from the body, or we just have a committee of 6, or I'm not sure, but that's where.
I agree.
But that's why you have Jim and Sheila meeting that often.
I don't, but I think that respectfully.
But again, I only met twice.
You were in there 3 times. You were
I
in
met there,
one-
no, I was not, you don't know. I was in there with
You walked
Liz.
out the first
I was
time.
in there with Sheila. That was it. I did
walked
not
out.
meet
What if
with
we did
anybody
that?
else.
What if we looked at, you want to go radical and change? Why don't we what about doing two two-member districts with 9 districts. Can we? We can't?
You probably need a referendum approval
I
to
don't think we
change.
did. I thought the board could do it. I
Well,
thought we could
pass
do
the
it.
time.
Is it past the time?
Pass the time.
Because that would really, I suggested that earlier on in the year. I thought it was.
Now we're going on to.
But I'm just saying, if we wanted to,
I'm just saying.
I know, I'm just saying.
But again, you can't say we're in there that long. I mean, Sheila had a time that she had to get out of there. I was in there with Sheila and Liz. That was it.
Okay,
That
well,
was
all
it.
I know is that the line between 5 and 6 got moved and I wasn't in the room. I was not in the room when the line between 5 and 6 got moved.
Who was in their room when 5 and 6 got moved?
Well, we talked about that line.
Right, and we talked about it with who? With Amy.
No, I was
Right.
not in the room.
We talked about it during the public hearing. We've talked about it before. We talked about giving up a little bit of that. I mean, what's wrong with the line? I mean, if I would rather you say I have a problem with the line and tell us what the problem is than draw a completely whole new map.
I am talking about the
I mean, I don't know what a more
process that I
fair
want.
process was than what happened there.
I'm just saying, I'm not specifically saying, like, I think we still have movement with the line and I knew this wasn't our last time in with the map maker. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm trying to refine the process so that it is more fair for the next round when we're in with the map maker, regardless of whether it's with this map or another map proposal. We're gonna be in these rooms again together. I would respectfully ask that we don't have 2 representatives for District 6. I think it's over representing District 6. And I think you are the chairman of this committee and I respect that position. But I think you should stand down from these specific meetings because we have a representative for District 6. And that makes it completely fair for all the districts to go in with their border territories. But right now, if we go with this setup, District 6 is overrepresented.
Members, if I could ask a question of.
Yeah, I mean, we went from talking about
That's why I said-
demographics and freedoms
No,
to
but I
now
said
there's
this
too
was
much
over.
representation. For when I was in the room, Liz, you and I talked for what, 5 minutes? Maybe on that one precinct? And I went in with Sheila on the other ones. I had no other input, so. Unfortunately, if you like it or not, I'm a member of this committee. So, I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Members, if I ask a question of Mr.
Yeah.
Olson, Mr. Seckler. I don't know the answer to this, so that's why I'm turning to you. Since we've got a map that's got deviation under 1%, if the board adopts a map that has deviation greater than this initial proposal, does that expose that map to contest or challenge?
I don't think so. It depends. I'll give you the lawyer answer. It depends. How much of a deviation you're going. You know, we're under, you know, the court cases, which, you know, kind of, you know, allow you up to a 10% deviation, 5% either way, but we really try to shy away from that and get as close to 0 as possible. And now we're under 1%. So can we go more? Yes.
But we could have like a 1.2% and it would not be considered.
That is
If we
correct.
had 10%.
Then you're trying
And I think it's
Yeah.
important, and I've spoken to individual board members or committee members about this in some of the questions, was why the deviation was within one person last time around was because the law used to require it. The law changed
Okay.
after the last time around. So that the statute used to say shall be equal in number, and now it says substantially equal in number. So
Okay.
it does give a little leeway.
And 1% is certainly something.
Certainly
that is a
within that.
Respectful.
Yes.
Clearly, the law, our goal should be the smallest deviation as possible, and that's whole one person, one vote principle, so that everyone's, you know, vote is counted almost equally. So we want to stay within that, but yeah, we have a little flexibility. But how the county code is still phrased, everything that you do, every other consideration should be, if you're splitting a municipality, if you're splitting a township, the only reason to do that is to get the other district as substantially equal in population to the other. So that's the caveat to it. We have some different considerations as a county board versus some other units of government because the mandate is so strict as to what the main focus needs to be is at keeping substantially equal in population.
And again, I preface this initially, I don't want to throw the fear of God in you, but the state is up to here in litigation in federal court, what's called a 3-judge court. And the Republicans and Democrats are heavy into litigation. And it's possible that the state map could be thrown out and go to the commission, where they pick a name out of the hat. It's possible, but that process is being dragged out, and you won't have a decision on that until sometime maybe in November, costing the state a lot of money.
Are they the same thing that we are, November or something, it becomes a commission?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
If I could make a suggestion, I think at this point, what I'd like to see, again, as an older planner, I'd love to get my hands on the maps that we have been allowed to do. I propose that perhaps we continue this meeting until next week when we have a full group and have at the maps ourselves personally. All the board members can have a look and do some data massage ourselves, just looking at various factors, and reconvene next week when everybody's here. A little difficult that we don't have our 3 other members, and if Mr. Zay would consider that, I think we could all have a go at the maps and have a look and see what's up, or however we want to think about it, and then next week make some final determinations in terms of what we're planning or what we'd like to do.
Can I mean, the Forest Preserve has done a map. I understand that it's finished. Will you introduce that map to this committee as well?
I don't know. I'll just talk to legal counsel. I don't know.
Have you seen that map yet?
Yeah, no.
Well, that might be something to do in the intervening week and see what they have come up with.
I haven't seen it either.
I'm sorry?
I haven't seen it either.
Okay, and that might be something that, if you want to be more firm next week or more committed to what ideas you might have after looking at that, then that might be, then we could go to council and move quickly to have a look at that. And as Mr. Zay said some weeks ago, we're going to be heading into, perhaps we are going to have a weekly or maybe twice a week meeting on this until we get it, until we get this where it's supposed to be. But I think today we're at a bit of a stalemate in terms of where we go next. I'm all kidding aside, I'm really looking forward to looking at this map and having just kind of from my knowledge of my district, having a look at it, et cetera. All the board members are able to do that. And I think if we reconvene next week, if you want to have a look at the Forest Preserves map, we can certainly consider that in terms of our individual considerations for this, and then meet next Tuesday or whatever date Mr. Zay chooses, and then solidify a little bit better where we're at. I think that would be the 12th.
Mr. Chairman, logistically, Tuesday is already pretty much booked in the afternoon. Rules is going to be there, as well as the possibility of legislative. So from a staff perspective, we would appreciate Wednesday. If
That's
that
fine.
works.
I'm just saying that maybe we reconvene next week and have a little more opportunity to talk amongst ourselves or whoever you may want to consult with and take it from there. I think we've gotten some idea of what direction we need to take next, depending on what people want to do, but
When you look at your dates, I just want to remind you, I just took a quick look at my notes. You originally looked at October 25th as perhaps the date where you can have a public hearing.
I think we'd still be
And
okay.
you'd still be
We'd be okay because next
Yeah.
week would be the, I'm sorry,
13th.
13th.
Yeah, you're still-
And then hopefully come
Yes.
to some decisions then, and then 13 and 7, we're looking at the 20th, and we could still have that hearing. So I think, again, forgive me for, I'm
No.
not grabbing anything away
No,
from you,
no,
but
no,
I just
not at
feel
all.
like we're at a
I
state.
appreciate it, yeah.
Kind of just a comment real quick. So about Jason with
Yeah.
scheduling and stuff, not that one committee is more important than another, but I think this is priority. We put rules off for 6 months. I'd say push rules off again and let's get us in Tuesday. I don't know, Wednesday I have a county kind of meeting at 2:00, not really, but it's visiting a nonprofit that I have scheduled. So,
I
I think Tuesday we should make a priority. I mean, I don't.
Again,
know.
I know it's,
I have
I
a-
know sometimes we think it's easy, but we have to see what Zach and Josina
Yeah,
are doing. We have to see what our
yes,
legal's doing. We have to
right,
see what, it's just not me saying we can have a meeting. That's why when we talked about it, that's, I'm trying to be fair in this whole process, and I'm sorry I'm here, but these are the rules. And this was the rules set up, and the
Yes.
rules were set up that the senior most member does
And
this.
that's.
And unfortunately, I am the senior most member, and I've been through this process, not once, not twice, but now a third time. So I kind of know what's going on. And I am taken aback a little bit because I think during this process, I have been fair and try to be open-minded to everybody on this, to make sure there's no problems. And that, you know, the fact that saying we're overrepresented or whatever, when I was only in the room twice, I mean, if we're talking about portions of Glendale Heights that were taken, I wasn't in the room when that happened. It was other districts that did that. Other districts can, you know, complain about it or whatever. Again, if we have something we want to do, call me right away.
Wait, you took Glendale Heights?
Here's A.
No, you took.
You meant Carroll Street.
No, I think people might be
No,
upset that a portion of Glendale Heights was taken. I had
I'm
nothing
sorry,
to do
but-
with that. I wasn't in the room.
Yeah.
Mary and Don were in the room. I had nothing to do with it. So someone could have objected to that. They didn't. So I don't know what's going on. Again, people said, you know, I didn't do my homework. I didn't have a printout of the precincts by political boundaries because I've been there 22 years. I know where people are. And guess what? If I do ban the precinct, that's my fault. I need to go in that precinct and work it. I don't work that way.
Chairman
So,
Zay?
yeah, go ahead, Josiana. Oh,
Thank you.
Dawn, I'm sorry, Dawn, how are you?
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted, for scheduling purposes, I would rather skip a meeting and have more beefier meetings as chairman of the legislative committee. So we will not be having a meeting next week because it would be a very short meeting and I just value people's time too much. So just for scheduling purposes, there will be no legislative meeting next week.
Okay.
Well, that makes life a little easier.
Easier, but again, that goes, Mary, I like your consideration, but are we having a meeting or are we having a workshop again? Where we can go and look at this other criteria. That's what I think we need to do, right?
We want to go in and look at the map.
I think we need input back from our other board members. Okay, this isn't public, so I don't know how the public's seeing it, but we got to get input from other board members. And then again, sit and dice whatever. Jason was nice enough to put it together. I had no idea. We want to get a Ouija board and figure out who goes in. I really don't care.
Here's my
Whatever,
question.
so it's a fair process. Nobody feels like they've been somehow, you know, dealt a bad hand. I mean, whatever you guys want to do.
Okay, here's my question. If we have another meeting next week in a workshop format like we did last Wednesday, okay?
Well, it can't be a meeting. It's got to be a workshop. Is that
Well, okay, if
okay?
we have a workshop,
Right.
okay, and other members have concerns, you know, have a look at the forest preserve map, what have you. Can they request, and I exclude myself because I'm pleased with District 4, my district. But if you have concerns, can you just ask the map makers to use your criteria? Or must it go through you before it's even, I mean, if it's not going to be produced for the public and it's simply a consideration, can that be done?
Why waste the time? If the criteria doesn't fit our legal, then it would be a waste, right?
So can I work with whatever members want to have input on a criteria? And we do this in tandem. Once again, I get that list and that criteria to our attorney and with our map makers during this week. I don't want to lose any time.
That's fine.
So
And then
I
you talk
think-
to them, see
yes.
what they say,
Okay.
and, you know, run it by, the 4 of us can run it.
Yeah.
If I can just, if that's the direction that we're going, compiling that by a certain date, so it's in total,
Okay.
where we have really run into some issue previously, not in this county, is when it's a bunch of one-offs.
Okay.
And so just, even if it's to the staff or, you know, to the 4 of us, and we're compiling that by a date and time certain,
Okay.
so that is the cutoff for consideration for whatever configuration it is.
Awesome.
I think that would be very helpful to all, because then, I don't, you know, no accusation that that email was not considered and, you know, brought into it. So if we are going to move in that direction, there should be the will, humbly suggested, of the committee, date and time certain for any consideration, so that the 4 of us, as the outside entities, can have eyes on it.
Okay.
But let me ask you this, is it possible, could the 4 of us as the majority ask council if we can use XYZ criteria you say yay or nay, and then if it's yes, we can forward it to you. Can we do that?
Again, I just want to be cognizant of the Open Meetings Act. You know, the majority of
that's
the
right.
quorum of
Yeah.
the committee should not be gathering to discuss committee meeting business outside of a scheduled and properly noticed
Could
meeting.
we break into groups where Sheila and I come up with a grouping that maybe we request our criteria and maybe Liz and Mary request their criteria? And then we just have two sets of criteria that we present?
Again,
Okay, let's do that.
contemporary stuff, it's contemporary communication that's the concern among majority of a quorum. So as long as you are under a majority of the quorum without contemporary communication, you're good. For example, you couldn't have you and I'll pick on Member Rutledge in a room and then speakerphone in members say.
Oh, yeah,
No, but it would only.
One could write an email to two could send an email to three could send an email to four.
In theory, yes, that would be fine.
And then one could send an email with the consensus to council.
Yes.
Yes, if that would be acceptable under the Open Meetings Act.
Yes.
Okay.
So then the Democrats on the board will pick the criteria they want and not get any input from the Republicans on the board.
Do you have additional, I mean, I feel like we've made the map that you've requested generally, that you're.
How I requested.
Well, I mean, that you're generally, it feels like you're happy. I mean, do you have another map that you want to request?
I was happy with it because when I talked to Liz and she was happy with it, and Mary was happy with it, nobody else said anything to me, and Don was happy with it, so.
I just wanted to do our
And
due
you know who I was really happy with it was our consultant and our lawyer said, wow, this went really well. I can't believe it. I told Jason, I'm gonna leave because this went really well.
I don't
And
think it has to see that we're not happy with it, just because we want to see alternatives.
Right, so I guess.
well, what are
I
the
think-
alternatives? I don't understand
I
what the
guess I'm
alternatives.
just, I guess, because maybe we didn't understand or do our job the first time, because we all consulted, this is what I don't understand, we all consulted with our members, we all did that. I mean, I know I did, we talked with Pete.
And we did as well.
So.
I did not.
So
I
we
tried.
did, so I guess so we knew that the results, I mean, when we were seeing the map, I mean, it doesn't look like, I don't know what you had with your group, but it doesn't look like really any districts had the will to really,
I don't think I
change
do it.
to change up the map or, or whatever, or we were working by our guidelines, which we all kind of agreed that we wanted to follow the county code and do that and do that. So we all came up with this consensus. So, so I understand and I get that, maybe looking at another map is not a bad idea. Maybe seeing what else, how other ways we can configure it, but I think we have time. I think we are like not concise on what direction we're giving our
Right,
map
but you can't
writer.
give them criteria and say, do it this way.
Right, I
And
think,
then how
I
do they
think we
do that?
should,
If
I
someone's
mean,
got to be there telling them how to do it.
and I think in all fairness, I think that we shouldn't
It
maybe.
can't be me
include
because
the
I'm not allowed to
Republican-
be in there anymore. So.
And I think we should let the Republicans see our criteria that we're sending, because you know what, we worked with them on these original maps. I mean, we are a committee, and just let them know, here's what we're sending over to our legal. I don't know, that's the way I thought committees were. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but
I'm just trying to do the will of the committee. I mean,
and
when the
get-
census numbers came out and we said that right now our districts all meet legal. And it was this committee that said, okay, we're not looking to make major changes. We're looking to change boundaries, clean them up, do whatever. District 1 and District 6 had to gain people because there was a big difference. And District 2 had to lose people. And the other districts seemed to be there, but we couldn't do it without changing District 4 because they were in the middle, and District 5 had to be changed because they're on the bottom of 6, so there could be some change there. And now, that's my frustration. If we were gonna do this and make major changes or ask for different criteria, we should have done that from the beginning. And now we're starting to get into a time crunch.
And I think we still have plenty of time. I will say, as you've mentioned, you've done this 3 times. So
Right.
you
And
have a
nobody else
wealth of
has.
knowledge. No one else in this room has done that. So I honestly thought that once.
Well,
All right, that's
That's
fair.
why you're getting the
I
big
I
one.
apologize profusely to Mr. Olson. He has obviously done this, but I thought that we would have a lot more movement within the room. And when I made a few questions I think Josina and Zach were more comfortable if they had gotten more consensus from the committee when I was asking for certain movement, certain information. So I didn't realize that my own hands were quite frankly as tied as they were when I was asking questions. So I'm just asking that we open up those options that I frankly didn't realize that I had agreed to shut it down to such a narrow level. I have not done this before. And I don't see the danger if we really want to do our due diligence in representing our citizenry and just saying, I want to see a different map. I don't, and I would like to create a different criteria.
What's that criteria? She's asking, what's the criteria?
I don't think it's been completely defined because I want to get consensus. And then, and we do have a majority on this committee. I do think the Democrats can come up with some consensus and request that. I don't think.
Yes, does this committee work by consent? What are the rules of this committee? Just so I make sure that I'm making, adhering to the rules of.
Robert's rules. I mean, it's got to.
But is it majority of this committee approves things, or is it, I keep hearing the word consensus, but that doesn't seem to be.
Consensus, no, you're right. It should be a vote of the committee if we're going to change course. I mean, that to be safe. I think an email from the committee members, the Democratic committee members saying we want to go this way. I guess you can do it, but it's not really within.
But does it need to come back to this committee for a vote before it gets handed to the legal, or how is, I'm just trying to make sure that I don't do anything without.
It should come back to the committee.
I was curious about this. I did call staff. I did ask Mr. Seckler because I knew that I had some concerns that I wanted to go a different direction. And I was asking about consensus, and I know that you gave me your best advice, and I did talk to staff as well. I don't think Nick's in the room, but I did call Nick and ask, do we just need consensus? And that generally was what I had been told. Not a vote of the committee, but consensus.
It was, as my understanding is what the committee has done for certain things in the past, instead of a formal vote on certain things, if everyone agrees, in fact, consensus just allows and directs in that regard.
And then
Versus if there's a contentious issue and people don't disagree, then, or people do disagree, then there would probably need to be some sort of formal committee action, which is.
But I think in the past, the way we've directed, the small changes that you've recommended, and I agree with that, we've all done it just like, yep, that sounds good, that a general consensus. And so I was hoping that just in the interest of time that we're talking about, that we could get a general consensus. I don't think there's any danger in reevaluating these maps under new criteria. And I'd be happy to get that criteria to our 4 members or to the 7 if necessary, put it through legal, get it to the map maker. And I don't think there's, it's completely within our rights as a committee to ask for.
Okay, well, we have 5 people here today, and I'm getting rather frustrated now because if you've got your criteria and we have legal counsel here, let's just do it. Because that's where I'm really at.
I think I still need to refine it a little. I want to talk to other members because I don't think that, even from my district, other members have come to me with certain criteria that they're interested in. I do think that I haven't refined it completely yet, to be quite honest. I can do, if you want to give me a time frame, maybe, I could get it in email format within the next 2 days. And if that's.
I think that's what we need to do here, because I think, Mr. Zay, will we plan to meet next Tuesday? If everyone is available.
I'm good.
You're good?
Yes,
Okay.
good.
And we'll follow the format of 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And then 1 will send the email to you in terms of the criteria. And we will get that to you by Friday for sure.
Yes.
And then that will give you, or shall we say Thursday? I don't mean to take this away from you. I'm just trying to.
It doesn't seem like whatever I say is gonna matter because I'm in the minority here, so it really doesn't matter what I say.
Oh, Jim, my world. I'm just trying to lighten it up a little bit. I'm just trying to lighten it up.
I just wanted to be clear.
Lighten it up a little.
We're just clear that the Democrats on the committee want to come up with different criteria
I think this
without the input of the Republican members.
No, I said,
No, they are not here today. They're absent. You've given input. They could have been here today. They are not here.
Wait a minute. No, you're talking about a new criteria you want to do.
Yeah, I think
Which
it's.
you won't tell us today because you still don't know, even though you want to do it, you haven't refined it. So we won't, you're gonna talk to her, she's gonna talk to you, you're gonna talk to him, then you're gonna talk to
I
the lawyer.
think, but
We
it's
won't
all
know
shut
about it.
down if council says no. And so.
Again, we
But
won't
I
know.
think, I honestly think for it to be open and transparent, if we want to do open and transparent
Send
government,
it to all the committee members?
yes.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that at all.
So after once you've approved it, do you mind sending it then to all the committee
No, I
members?
think before they
I think
approve.
we
Send it to
Oh,
Jim
before,
and
yeah,
then
before they
staff
approve
will
it.
have
Yeah, that's what has to be done.
And Amy just send it
Don't
individually
be,
one by
don't be
one.
scared of the big old ugly Republicans.
I mean, I just wanted to have this as a transparent process because you know, people are gonna FOIA, they're gonna FOIA our
Yeah.
emails, they're gonna FOIA everything.
So send it one by one,
Okay.
and then you will receive it by, did we decide on Thursday?
Possible.
End of business Thursday?
Right.
End of business Thursday, yes.
Point. Sorry, one logistical, but we do have Columbus Day Monday, so staff's not in, and I don't know what our other.
Well, we.
external- So Thursday, I was just gonna say, Thursday's a great idea.
Okay,
That's-
Thursday?
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay.
Thursday's great, then we have a business day, and if we're Tuesday.
Jason, stop taking away my 30
Sorry.
seconds as chairman of this committee, and I do apologize, Mr. Say, I'm just trying to
No, I
get this.
appreciate it, Mary. I'm confused as
I,
to.
so Amy will write to Sheila to me, we will come up with some criteria
Jim and the
on
others.
Thursday. That criteria will be sent to.
No, they gotta include the.
Oh, no,
Yeah, both.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay,
Okay,
everyone will be informed of what the criteria is. We will then send said criteria on Thursday by the end of business to you, okay? And then you will let us know on Friday, because I can't imagine this is gonna take a whole lot of research, et cetera. Friday, we will know if we can go ahead and talk about this at our meeting on Tuesday or not. Fair enough?
Yes.
Fair enough. Sorry, Mr. Say.
Thank you, Mary.
I do apologize.
No, I'm glad.
This
Thank
would
you,
also
Vice
be my
Chair
other
Lozak.
floor skill set.
Yeah.
You are going there.
No, that's fine.
Okay, if that works for you, then I think the concerns are heard.
I'm just
You
a
will let us
figurehead.
know if there's a
I don't
problem.
get to
and we'll take
participate
it.
anymore.
Okay, is that fair enough?
I
Thank you,
think
Mr.
so.
Zach.
Thank you. No, thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll talk to Zach and Josina after we get,
Okay,
we'll come together.
fair enough.
Yeah.
But once we get that criteria, we'll come back on that Tuesday and then we'll move on that.
Yeah.
Nothing can be done without a board. My problem is giving them a criteria, but not no one being there to say, move this line, do this, do that. How is this?
No, I
work?
think after, if they say the criteria is okay, then we go back in the drawing room. Is that what I'm understanding, right?
Right.
Is that what you're all?
Yeah, like I think
Yes.
once we say the criteria is okay, Jack and Josina make a map that's based on that criteria.
No, we go back in the
No.
drawing room, I think.
They can't
Two and two.
draw a map on their own. You have to be there to tell them what to do and what lines to
Because
move.
that's what I asked Amy earlier. Remember?
I
asked-
just don't want, I want to start, I want to use the expertise of our map makers, quite frankly, to take our criteria and create a map based on that criteria.
And that's what I asked, and
considered at all.
Josina said there could be 1,000 different
1,000
versions.
different,
But
so
it
that
has
would
to
sound
be
like-
like-
She only needs to draw us one.
But as long as we refine the criteria, then they can make a map based on the refine. If we had given them carte blanche, then there are.
What would
I
that
asked that
criteria
earlier.
be? I mean, what would be an example of that criteria?
That's where I would like to work with them, with my other members and define it.
So how
So,
do you know that then they can draw a map on that criteria?
because I'm confident that we have paid $50,000 to a map maker and they know what they're doing. We are not the experts in the room, they are.
But they need direction.
And that's what we're gonna give them with the criteria.
See, that's what
No,
I
you're gonna
asked
give
that
them an
earlier.
outline.
Remember, Amy, I asked that earlier. I
Okay.
said, can you give us 2 maps with our criteria, right?
Right.
And then Josina said, the problem is I can do 1,000 different maps, right? So, because that's what I
Okay,
said, why would
and
you drop
maybe I
2 maps?
misunderstood it
Right,
differently, is that, can Josina, can you answer that one more time? Because my understanding was is that as long as our criteria is defined and fairly
Oh, our-
specific, then you could create a map based on that more defined
I asked
criteria.
about the rules.
Okay,
The
yeah,
county
that's
code,
what I
right.
thought,
Okay,
okay,
yep.
okay.
Why don't we get through the criteria and the legal first? Because it also, again, like I said before, it also depends on the criteria in terms of how restrictive or flexible it is from a
Okay.
legal standpoint. So let's get through step 1 and then we can discuss it on Tuesday.
And maybe Josina comes back and says, based on these criteria, you're not so far off of this. She confirms that this was the map we should all be working on. but she's, and you guys are the experts. We're not. Jim, I appreciate your experience in all of this, but, you know, as a body, I feel better going to voters after the fact and saying, yeah, we were able to view a couple of different maps to make sure that the decisions that we made on this committee were, you know, with the voters in mind. So, and frankly, I mean, one of the criteria that I'm going to put out there is District 1 and District 6, in my opinion, lost so many residents because the minority populations were undercounted.
Well, Sheila, that's not, that is hearsay. It is not.
We can't.
It is
we can't
unbelievable.
gather.
That's
We
not
only have the data
legally-
that we have.
That's not legally binding. It's not.
Can't do that.
But the 1% or the, you know, we've got a little bit of leeway there, and that, you know, I still think that I would feel better
That's a
going to the
reckless
voters.
statement. I mean, to say that. I mean, it is. The census is the numbers. And yours, do you have any proof that they were undercounted in our district or in District 1?
Well, and I'll just say that regardless of whether they're accurate or not, and we've seen this, you know, with Aurora and other municipalities, either way, that can go to court. There can be another process that happens, but your requirement currently is to draw with the census numbers. That is what you legally have to do between now and the end of the year. Whether those get adjusted, whether you redraw later, that's up to lawsuits. But currently, we're only allowed to use the current census numbers, not adjust based off of any discrepancies. And we're also required to use current census numbers, not to project towards growth or changes that we expect to happen. They have to be drawn based off of the numbers that we have that were the best accurate count that the census could provide as of what they thought the population was on April 1st of 2020.
But we don't have to go down to that one like we did in years past. There's
No.
a little bit of wiggle there, and that's the only point I was
Which
trying
we've
to
already
get.
used by going under 1%.
Yeah.
We're not using direct, in the past, didn't you use?
One
We're down to one.
Person,
Correct.
No, we're
We're
not.
using
We're
under
using
1%, which is a different
Which,
number.
again, was the,
larger
we'll use that word, the consensus of this
Yes.
committee was to get within 1% of each district.
And I think we could still keep that as a general consensus for the second round.
Mr. Chairman, just so I know.
Call me Jim.
Jim in the minority.
What did somebody tell me? What am I? Ranking member. Officer, member of the minority.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, sure. From my perspective, because we have to post agendas Thursday for the following week for the Columbus. So I want to double check. What I'm hearing is we will have an agenda regardless for next Tuesday.
Yeah.
And if for some reason something changes, it changes, but I need to post something, period. That's what I just want to confirm.
Yes,
Okay,
we'll have a
thank
meeting Tuesday
thank
for
you.
sure. And thank you to member to start for
Freeing
Yeah.
up.
I will talk to Vice Chair Selman.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And I apologize, what time on Tuesday? I just want to mark it off in my calendar.
Well, with that, we can do it anytime after the county board meeting. So what's best for the will of the committee or Mr. Chairman at your
1 o'clock.
discretion?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock?
Assuming county board is over.
Please.
So how about, we'll post it at 1 o'clock, but we'll do it
I know.
whatever following county board.
1 o'clock, how about immediate following county, 1 o'clock?
You have to put a time. So but we can
12:30,
start anytime after that.
12 o'clock or immediately following? No? Not gonna
No, we'll
happen.
be done by 12.
Yeah, we
No,
haven't done
we
by
had
12 in a
county board, we got done
long
early.
time.
Okay, so let's, 1 o'clock then, Mr. Chairman, we'll set it for, and I'll
That's fine.
talk to Ashley Solomon.
10:05.
Nice try.
Just one more caveat. We talked a little bit about deviation. 10 years ago in Chicago, we underpopulated the south side to make sure we had as many African-American wards as we possibly could. And we overpopulated the north side. Well, it's all come to roost 10 years later. Now the south side of Chicago is severely underpopulated. Downtown and the north side are all overpopulated, and now we have nothing but problems trying to shift people around. And we did it purposely 10 years ago in order to make sure we had a sufficient amount of minority wards. So just be careful with the deviation And you do have to think 10 years down the road, a little bit, a
Right, I
little
agree,
bit.
I agree.
So you avoid the problems that we're having in Chicago now. Just again, a caveat.
Yep.
to
No,
think
that's
about.
good advice, for sure.
And things change, right, over
Yes.
10 years?
Yeah, oh,
Because I'm
and-
pretty sure the Republicans drew the map last time and
in
we're 10 years
Chicago?
later, no, here in DuPage.
Oh, okay.
It's changed, so, you know. So you never know what could happen. Be careful what you wish for.
Be careful what you wish. And in Aurora, I should tell you also about, we feel we were undercounted severely, and we now have embarked on the legal process, and there's an appeal process in the census, the federal government side, on how to appeal that, and then perhaps even go to a special census for a portion that we think was undercounted. But there's a process for that. Josina and Zach are correct. We have to stick to the numbers we have now.
And even that process is after the map has to be statutory.
Yeah.
Okay, any old business? Any new business? The motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.